G'day, folks. Welcome to the Footy with Mates. Very excited about my mate today. This off-season, like many of you, I missed the footy so bloody much. I was lucky how I even went into the AFL store at High Point just to walk and see the TVs and see what they were playing on Fox Footy and try and start a conversation with the boy working at the AFL store. And I don't think he liked footy. But I was lucky enough, however, to have one of the co-writers from Arnie Donna, Sam, mentioned to me in early December that there was a book I might like to read, and it turned out to be my favourite sports book or footy book that I've read in a very, very, very long time. It's called The Season, and it's written by one of Australia's most loved and greatest writers, Helen Garner. It's self-described as a nana's book about footy. Helen spent 2023, I believe, that just doing the data, attending the trainings and games for her grandson Ambi's under-16s footy team. For me, it's a book about footy in Melbourne, about the relationship between grandparents and grandchildren, about masculinity, and at some points, and this is what I want to talk about most, Helen, KO. So part of me can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm lucky enough to say this week that I'm joined by my new footy mate, Helen Garner. Hi, Helen. How are you?
Hi, I'm well, thanks.
Thanks so much for coming and doing this.
I'm glad.
We're recording this on a day when it's 38 degrees.
Is it 38?
Yeah, it's brutal. But we're in a nice big factory.
It's nice here.
But also just some quick, this is being done, this will be released a little bit later, but the co-host of this show, Tom, today had his second baby. So hello to Tom, even though this is going to come out in a while. Hello to Tom and his two bubs.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Yes. So I love this book. It was a really great book and it filled my summer off-season wonderfully. Why did you write the book?
Why? Well, I once heard a French guy being interviewed about a book he'd written, and it was a book about a psych hospital which is in a boat on the River Seine. And the journalist says to him, what made you interested in this? And he said, ignorance and curiosity. Right. And those are the two things that made me want to do this. I wanted to hang around with my Ambrose, the boy in the book. He's my youngest grandchild, and there's not going to be any more, obviously. And I just, if you see their tail lights disappearing down the road, you think, my God, I haven't done enough. I haven't hung around him enough. I don't know enough about what he loves and is excited by. And so I used to just drive him to training over the years because I've lived next door to them, for all their lives. And I just drive him and drop him off, and off he'd trot. But I noticed that he was suddenly 6 foot tall. When the kid's actually living right next to you, you don't notice that they're putting on these tremendous growth spurts. Yeah. And as he jogged away, bouncing his ball, I thought, look, he's nearly a man. And I'm nearly dead. And I thought, I'm not really, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm just old. Sure. But I thought maybe I could follow him through a season and see what it's like and just see what he's like in the footy world. And so I asked him if I could do that. And he was completely bewildered by that anyone would be interested. But he said, he said it was okay with him. So I did it. And it's the best fun I've ever had writing a book. I loved it. I was so happy.
The line I like, and I think it's kind of when I describe the book to people, I'm going to badger the line, but essentially say I want to know him before he becomes a man and before I die.
Yeah. And
that's such a beautiful line, and it made me think about my relationship with my grandparents and with footy and everything. But so you went to every training, and it starts in summer, and it's beautiful, and you're watching
pre-season
beautiful sunsets, and then it gets to winter, and you become very cold.
When I showed the book to the coach, Archie, who's a young coach, the first thing he said to me is, why don't you get yourself a decent coat? I said, what are you talking about? He said, every time you went to training, you were shivering. Why don't you get a coat?
Do you have a decent coat? What do you got now?
Well, I've got a horrible-looking old thing, but I was always surprised well, you see, I mean, at training, everyone else was all revved up and warm, and they were running and sweating, and I was just kind of walked in off the street, and I was kept well back, I wasn't up close to them, and I thought, oh, what a pleasant evening, and then the time passes, and I'm freezing my ass off.
Yeah, no, you did very well. During this season as well, you got COVID at some point, but I rode the roller coaster of I feel that in Melbourne when that cold comes in, it's shocking. But you said you enjoyed it so much. What do you love? Well, firstly, do you love footy?
Yeah, I love footy, and that's another thing that's really surprised me. I lived in Sydney for a couple of years, and my marriage broke up, and I came back, with my tail between my legs, and my daughter and her husband were both Western Bulldogs nuts, and I saw that what a big part footy played in their lives and in what they thought about and loved and were excited by. And I thought, well, it's not my kind of thing, but if I want to hang out with them, I'm going to have to find out about it. So I started watching and I just sort of got hooked. Well, there was an actual moment, I've described this in the book, where I felt the hook go into me. I was watching, at this point I was living rather dismally alone in a little rented place up in Ascot Vale, and I was watching TV one night and I saw a documentary called The Year of the Dogs, which was about the Western Bulldogs, and it was about the time when the AFL was like spreading itself countrywide, and a lot of teams were being amalgamated with other teams from other states, and I saw in this documentary how devastating this was to people of Footscray and working class teams, who were just suddenly being dragged into some kind of spotlight of glamour and fame, and of course I at the time thought, really, I'm not interested in that. This was of no interest to me. But then Chris Grant, who I'd never heard of at that point, former captain of the Western Bulldogs, and well known as a sort of noble character. He was asked in this documentary, they said, how come you didn't accept the invitation to play for X, whatever fancy club it was? And he said, I'll tell you. He said, I got a letter from somebody, a stranger. I opened it up, and it was from a young boy, and it said, Dear Chris Grant, please don't leave. I haven't got much money. This is all I can spare. Please don't leave. And he'd sticky taped onto the letter a 50-cent piece. And Chris Grant said, so I couldn't leave, could I? I thought, oh, what a wonderful guy. Yeah. So I just went straight to the computer or on the spot and joined up.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah.
No, it was either a sweet, open 8-year-old boy or it was a very cynical 50-year-old.
Oh, what an awful thing to say. That had never occurred to me until this moment.
Well, that's what I do with Petrarca at Melbourne now, I think. But it's that documentary as well. Does that not also have the Terry Wallace, if I see any of you smiling out there, I'll spew up.
Yeah. It's really shocking to me that there was a sort of wretchedness about the players at that point, and there were two. They followed these two women, a mother and a daughter, who were like working class people from Footscray, whose faithfulness to the Bulldogs brought them to every training, and they sat there under their umbrellas, dripping wet, and their faithfulness and devotion was something I've never thought about before. And I watched the players being harangued by the coach, and they sat sadly with their spines leaning forward, and they were sort of filthy and soaking wet, and it kind of broke my heart. And so when Chris Grant said that thing about the 50-cent piece, I thought, I'd like to get, I'm getting in here. This looks interesting to me.
Yeah, and Footscray and the Doggies are a special team. I think they are the coolest, I think, of the Victorian teams in that they do have a lot of heart, and they
they're still very deeply connected to where they come from, and you don't feel any of them are kind of stooping to play there.
No, and they attract, I feel like when Treloar went there, I felt like that's where he should be.
Yes.
Because he's such an eloquent and thoughtful individual.
Yeah,
it felt
couldn't
right
agree
there.
more.
But at the same time, Liberatore also feels exactly right there in that big mustache and Simpsons tattooed covered fellow. So one of my favourite bits that jumped out of my skin, it's when I was reading your book and I thought, I have to speak to Helen now, is when you mention there's a moment where I think your family's out, they're away, but you want to try and watch the game. And this is also something that I'm fascinated by, is your house is next door to your daughter's house, and you've taken down the fence, and you have a big backyard and you share the backyard, which is great.
Yeah.
So cool. But also, so you go into their house and try and turn the footy on, but you have to use an app called KO. Now, what's your experience of KO, Helen Garner?
Well, see, look, this is what usually happens. When there's going to be a game on TV, a couple of my son-in-law's friends will come over and there's beer and there's, like he's busily cooking sausages and stuff like that. It's like an event every week. And so, I just stroll in just before the bounce and it's all been prepared. And I don't know anything about KO and all that sort of stuff. I didn't even know what it was. And so, when they were all going away and they weren't going to be there for the match, I said, how do I turn on KO so I can watch? And my daughter, who knows everything about that kind of, she says, you do this. And I go, oh yeah, I'll shit it in. And then when the moment came, I just could not get it to do its thing.
Yeah.
And I knew the game had started and I was so frustrated. So I ran next door and I got my little transistor.
Yeah, you got it, yes. Well, I hope you don't feel that was your fault. It was entirely KO's fault.
Well, I have heard that KO are hopeless and really boring and stupid.
Oh.
But,
it was just wonderful to, like, in a book about football, you really did capture it. You talk as well in the book about how you don't understand the rules and you don't almost you're not interested in the rules. It's separate to the rules. So what do you take from the game if you're not worried about 50 metres, how far they kick or this or that? What grips you?
Well, it's not that I don't want to understand. I understand the rules enough to watch a game and understand what's going on, but I do like to watch it with. I never go to a game because I can't, I'm old and I can't see properly and I'm uncomfortable and I love to watch it on TV and I like to be with people who do know what's going on. And my son-in-law is one of those people who he just knows everything about footy. So his presence is, and he and Ambi, when we're watching a game, they're talking like technically to each other all the time. I go, oh, I get it. So it's not from anyone explaining it to me that I understand, but just from watching the game and hearing a commentator. But I realised that I thought, oh God, I don't know about the sub rule, and I don't know. There's a lot of things I just don't know. And I haven't even been bothered to find out because it didn't stop me from enjoying the game. But I thought, well, I'm writing a book about it now and I'm going to make a fool of myself and all the blokes are going to laugh at me. And then I thought, well, does that mean I'm going to have to do research? And in my heart sank and I thought, no, I don't want to treat it like a piece of journalism where you look like an idiot if you haven't got the facts at your disposal. I thought, no, I just want to write about what it's like to watch footy and to be emotionally connected to a team. And I also thought, if I think about this book as what you said at the start, a Nana's book about footy, that gives me a place to stand to tell the story. It means that I could build my ignorance into the story, and it actually would have a sort of comic effect.
Yeah.
So, like for example, I'm having a coffee with a friend, and he says to me, oh, I've been following Essendon since I was a kid and since I was 11. He said, I've never missed a game and I go with the same 4 people every time and all those years. And this is a guy of my age, So I said, great. Well, you can explain to me the changes in the sub rule. And he straightens his back and he goes, I can and I will. And so he then did.
Yeah.
And he gave me a beautiful account of it, and I understood it. It was everything he said was crystalline in its clarity, and I thought, oh, cool. Now I know about the sub rule. And I went home, and when I woke up the next morning, I didn't remember anything about it. Not a single thing had sunk in. So this is probably partly cognitive decline because I'm in my 80s, but it's also that really I don't care about the sub rule. It just, okay, one guy goes off, another guy comes on, and I'm still watching it heart in mouth.
Yeah.
So what I get about it, you asked me at the beginning of that, what I get is, I mean, the first thing that comes to me is the beauty of the game. I find there's something so kind of ancient and classical about those superb young men's bodies. You know, they're like ones you see in ancient sculptures. The AFL body is, because it's so tall and because there's so much reaching and stretching that goes on, there's the more I watch, the more I see things that I've seen in art, you know, like I've seen in Blake, you know, the way that he will paint or draw some sort of angelic figure in a moment of extremis, you know, with all the muscles showing, and he's about to take off into heaven. And,
no, absolutely.
Yeah, and I and also I'm in a reading group, and we've been reading Homer.
Oh yeah,
the Iliad, and so you know, I was kind of the full bottle on you know, manly behaviour on battlefields. And I see that, you know, and it's not just the battle part that I see, it's the care for each other on the teams, the love and care that exists between the players.
Sure.
And I would have once thought that if I talked about that, real footy buffs would say, "Oh, come off it, hell, you know, they're just fighting, you know, it's just..." But I think that almost everybody who loves football is responding to it on a very deep level.
Yeah.
And nobody so far has sort of mocked me for any of the exaggerated things I said in the book.
I think it's entirely right. I feel like with footy, it's, it is a connection to those great moments. I was at the final last year between Brisbane and Geelong, and at the end of that game, I think Geelong were up by 3 points with a minute 30 left, and this was to go, and whoever won that game essentially would win the grand final in retrospect. And just the amount of drama and emotion and in that 100,000 people in this one place, it really is unique and incredible. But yeah, no.
Yeah, you know, one thing I really loved during the pandemic was how they played a couple of weeks of games with no crowds.
Yeah, that was weird.
And I loved that. It was like a sort of purer version of the game, because there was no roaring of the crowd. Yeah. And so all there was this pure athleticism right before your eyes, and you could hear the boot hit the ball, and you could hear the men shouting to each other, and I watched it. I was enraptured by it. And when they finally thought, "Oh, we can start putting on, you know, a soundtrack from other games," because nobody could possibly watch footy without everyone roaring, and I was so disappointed.
It became strangely dystopian when they put the fake sounds in, didn't they?
Yeah, apparently, I think they should cut the music too, the footy.
That is a point. Yeah, there's a particularly at Marvel, which is where the Dogs play. There is a real 2025 approach now where there's lights and music and sound, and the I think there's a world for both where there's something about just the sound of people screaming that's really incredible as well.
Oh, that's fabulous to me. But when they play a song that Cody Waitman likes just because he's kicked the guy, I think, come off it. What the?
Yeah, you don't have to cross over with what music Cody Waitman likes. That's fine.
I don't know what he likes.
I'm sure. Yeah, no, he's in the promo. You know, for Channel 7's big launch this year. It's cool. Cody Waitman doing street graffiti. Because he's Cody Waitman, I think the AFL believes, is the coolest kid in town. Like, he's as cool as it gets, Cody Waitman.
I hope he does something about his haircut.
What's he got? Is it just like a bit of a surfy look at the moment?
No, I don't know. He was fine forever, and then he had this cut where it was sort of, you know, like a bit of a fade over the ears.
Oh yeah, they're doing that.
And he had that like bit that comes up the top with a little what girls have on
top
there.
knot,
a little top knot, and then the rest just hung down. And that's a really bad look, I thought. Cody, no.
I look at all of them and I just have immense jealousy, Helen.
Me too. God,
absolutely
I die of envy.
Yeah.
Watching people that are that mighty.
Do you think I should go to Turkey and get the transplant? And so I can look and do the cool hair color?
Absolutely not.
Do you know what they do? They take your hair from the back of your head and put it on they replant it. Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh, that's nuts. But you should give us a look at your head.
I've got to go. Okay, done.
Okay, turn around. Oh, you've got a lovely shaped head.
Oh, thank you.
No, go for it.
That's what a lot of men say to me as well, because your book is also about when boys to men and that season or two where you sort of see that, and you saw it with Ambi, with your grandson. But what happens when I started losing my hair at like 22, and I was like, well, who am I? What is this? Like, I've got no hair. So I very quickly shaved it and just went, well, this is who I am now. But so many...
You shaved your head at the age of 22?
I was at drama school, and I had to shave my head for a production of Much Ado About Nothing.
Okay.
Because I was playing like an army man who shaved his head, and I could see the recede, Helen, and I went, I'm done. I'm never going to perform again. No one wants a bald guy. Little did I know that's what the only thing people wanted was...
Well, baldness is the coolest thing.
Yeah,
it totally is. And if I had a good shaped head and a good shaped hairline, I would have a number one buzz. No worries. But I would look stupid.
If you ever want to do it, you hit me up and you let me know, because I'll bring over the old wall trimmer and we can sort it out.
Don't worry, we've got one.
Okay, good. Well, yes, Ambi, in your book also, he gets the mullet. Doesn't he, at WOMAD?
Yeah, he got a mullet at WOMAD.
It's a great sentence. A mullet at WOMAD. But yeah, like talking about being a nana, do you like being a nana?
Oh, I love it. It's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah?
Truly, bar none. Yeah, I've had, just in this century has been the happiest years of my life, being a nana, because I actually love kids and I love hanging out with them, and I only ever had one, which is a whole another story. And they're just so funny.
Yeah.
We just laughed all the time, and I just loved watching them change, and yeah, it's the best, the most sort of privileged time of my life, I think.
Yeah, because I think you've said before that when your granddaughter was born, you got her instantly.
Yeah, and she got me.
Yeah.
I felt we got each other straight away. With the boys, it was different because, I come from a pretty girl-heavy world.
Yeah.
And I only had a daughter, and I've got 4 sisters and 1 brother. And my brother was way younger than me in the family, so I never knew him when we were small. We weren't small kids together.
Yeah.
But so yeah, boys, they sort of fascinate me. I mean, as soon as I say that, there comes to mind something that the boys in the team always did. When I'd go to training, and I would always stand back behind the rail. They never gave me any eye contact from from the beginning of the season to the end. They never spoke to me.
Well, they were training.
Yeah, I didn't want them to, and so I never introduced myself or went up close to them, except sometimes I needed to take some notes, and they didn't even notice I was there. And that's the thing I noticed about boys that I was coming to, was they have, and men have, incredible tunnel vision when there's something they have to do. And I realised that this is something that has driven me crazy in the men that I've
Yeah, sure.
been married to and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when I saw it in action in footy, I changed my attitude towards it. Like, this is a small example. I'm just standing, the boys are all arriving for training, and they all roll up, and some are on their bikes and some are just walking, and some of them hop out of their dad's car. But this kid will pedal up on his bike, just right near the goals, and he gets off the bike and he just flings the bike on its side, skidding across the grass, and he doesn't look at it. He doesn't lean it on a pole like I would, or the girls would sort of neatly chain their bike to a post. He just goes wham like this and not looking, and he's got he's pulling his stuff out of his bag and he throws the bag, and I mean, as a sort of mother and grandmother, I'm tempted to say, Boof, you've just thrown your bike. Pick it up, man, pick it up. But I mean, I wouldn't dream of it because I'd never spoken to them, and it would be stupid.
I wonder if he'd do it.
Well, I mean, he probably, I don't know. I think he probably wouldn't. I wouldn't if I was going to training and I was a boy. But the thing is that what that did for me was it gave me a very strong knowledge that I was a woman, when I would see how they just fling stuff down and keep going because they're going to training. They're not going to fix their bike to a fence. And, my grandson gets there, he takes his phone out of his pocket and just flips it onto the grass, and it's lying on the grass. And I just had to bite my lip not to say, pick that phone up.
Yeah, yeah. So it's almost like end goal orientated as opposed to an experience of the whole thing.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, the strange difference between the way women survey the scene. I don't know if it's because women, our job is sort of looking after people often, whereas blokes are going, I'm going to kick some goals, boom, and that's what they're doing.
It's a strange, I feel from doing footy training myself and being no good at footy, I remember being as a teenager, I definitely remember learning all the hard corners of being a boy and man and what it was expected of me. And I feel like even the legacy of that and things I've had to work out of my head as I've gotten older.
Hard corners, that's a really terrific phrase for it.
Yeah.
See, that's something when I was at school, we had to play hockey, and I didn't like it because I knew I was going to get hit in the shin by a stick, but I wasn't going to get run into by an enormous person and flattened on the ground.
Yeah.
So I've never done that, but when I watched the boys in the team training and doing that and doing it in a game, I thought how fantastic just to go all out and really blast your way into the world where the other people are.
You've got a great coach, and Archie's a 21-year-old
He's 20.
fella who's just got positivity and a really clever approach to it as well in the book. The thing I've kind of seen with a lot of my male friends as we've gotten older is a fear of positivity and saying something positive.
Tell me more about that.
It feels like it's almost, and footy's a great example of it. It's like there's moments where it would be really hard for me to say to a friend, like, I think what you just did is so good. It's almost a sign of weakness in some respects.
What, it's a bit like sucky or something? A bit
or just
wet?
it's vulnerable, I think, more than anything, because you're putting yourself out there in some way or another.
Well, perhaps you're also putting yourself down there.
Yeah.
You're praising someone, so you're putting them above you in some way.
Yeah.
And they don't believe it? Or?
Yeah, it's a strange moment, but you feel this moment of vulnerability, or it's easy to say it about other people, or even I think that's what a lot of people like about an element of football or sport at the very least, is being able to be positive about something that you can agree on, that's not a real core truth about yourself or something like that. It's an interesting, that's what,
I'm interested in what people say about tackling, what the boys would say. When I would ask Ambrose for the rules about tackling, and he'd sort of map it out for me, and then I'd watch. I remember him saying one thing. I put this in the book, where he said to me, if I tackle someone and they get free of me and they win the tackle, he says afterwards, I remember everything about it. I remember everything I did wrong and why it happened. He said, whereas if I tackle someone and he goes down and I win the tackle, he said, when it's over, he said, I feel as if I've been unconscious. He says, I feel as if my eyes have been shut.
Oh, right.
He's sort of, and he said, and I can't remember anything about the tackle.
If it's a good tackle.
I couldn't remember why it was good or what I did. And I was really struck by that, and it reminded me of something. I once heard of some famous jazz saxophone player say, when I play badly, it's my fault. When I play well, it's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And I thought that was kind of a description of a sort of a flow state, really, isn't it? Where your willpower is sort of you're not thinking in the normal sense of the word.
It made me think Orson Welles said, every actor believes every bad review that's ever written about them.
Yeah, same with writers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the same with me. 12 years of comedy. Just I remember every bad quote.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Even though I don't care.
Yeah.
And we're
well,
fine.
on one level you don't care, but deep down you're sort of wounded to the quick.
Yeah. With creativity, I guess, it's maybe with sport as well, but this idea of so many creatives are just looking for structure because there's none. It's you're trying something and you're seeing where it lands and how it lands. So any metric or any sort of institution that you can build around you, whether it's real or fake, is incredibly valuable, whether that's reviews or approval or sellout or anything you can. At least that's how it's felt for me, is anytime you can find approval from somewhere, you're thirsty for it. Yeah,
that's true. But I've always felt that that praise is... I immediately start to say you, where I mean I. I crave it, and I think everybody craves it. But I there's a kind of bottomless factor. You never get enough.
Yeah.
Even, yeah. This is interesting. At the end of, I'm going to have to sort of do a spoiler.
Please. Yeah, well, no.
Yeah, I'll do a spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler alert if you haven't read it, but it is a great book and I'd recommend listening.
Even if you know the end, you still might like it.
It's an incredible season that you chose to cover, I'll say.
I know. What a piece of
I couldn't
luck.
believe that, actually.
No, but when the team that didn't win the grand final, which was Newport, and I'd never seen the kind of ritual of the giving of the medals and stuff like that, but when they were given their medals, each one of them, you'd have to get up, go forward. The guy would hang the medal around your neck on a ribbon, and each one, almost all of the members of that team, would turn around to go back to their place, and they would put their hand to the back of their neck, grab the ribbon, pull it back over their head so that the medal came off, and hold it in their fist. And they'd hold it in their fist all the way back to their position.
Hiding it all.
And we see, I'm thinking, what's that? What is it? As a gesture. See, a lot of the kids there are Muslims, and I thought, I wonder if this is an Islamic thing, something about praise, dealing with praise, or dealing with praise when you haven't won. When you've come second. And I was terribly shocked by it. At the same time, I had a vivid memory of knowing exactly how they must be feeling at that moment. And that is, if I get shortlisted for a prize and someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, Helen, congratulations, you got shortlisted for the X Prize," I want to smash them. I just want to punch their lights out. I have this feeling of violent rage, which is infantile. It goes right back to some... And I thought those kids have just been praised for not having won, and there's something deeply humiliating about that. And I was really shocked, and I thought I could put that into the book, but then I thought, no, what I think about winning a prize has kind of got nothing to do with this. But if I'd been writing like an article about it or something, I would have put that in. But I had this deep empathy for them for doing that, and I still don't know if, as a gesture, it's considered bad form.
Yeah, no. Or it makes me think of, and sorry to bring up another traumatic memory, but the 2021 grand final between Melbourne the Dogs, where Petrarca won the Norm Smith medal, so best on ground, and he took it off after being awarded it and held it separately. And I took that to mean as he didn't want to be sort of elevated above the other 22 who played that game.
Yeah.
So I found, it's a...
Well, there's a whole range of interpretations you could put on it. But it was when this happened with the Newport side, it wasn't every single player, but it was almost everyone.
Yeah,
and it didn't look like they'd planned it or anything, but I was kind of weirdly moved by it, and I felt for them very deeply.
Interesting. It's funny, sorry to tangent, but... when I used to play footy, and maybe it's because I was an actor or performer or on the way to being that, but I found it all incredibly performative. And I would think about as I showed up, how do I look showing up? Like I have my bag on my shoulder and I'm bringing it in, and what am I wearing to the grin? I think it was maybe I should have been in Little Shop of Horrors and not in the footy team, but... That's fascinating. I'm sure that's very common.
I
think it's common, yeah.
But the woman used to cut my hair years ago. She told me she cut a lot of footballers' hair.
Right.
And she said they would often say, "Don't make me look as if I've just had a haircut."
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, it's been a wonderful chat. I just I knew it would be, so thank you for making the time.
Oh, is it over? I thought we were going to talk on forever.
Oh, we could. I had one more question. This is a selfish one, but I think one that people will be interested in. I'm doing my first solo hour of comedy at this comedy festival coming up.
Yeah.
And it's a show of stories. And as I've been writing this show, there's different creatives around me write for different reasons. So I know some people write purely because they want to try something, but I find that I kind of get energy from thinking what people will like. So that idea of who am I writing for, or who they will like this when we show this to these people, they will like it, versus some people are purely doing it for it comes from the exact opposite direction. I'm just curious, who do you write for when you're writing this book or any of your books? Do you write for people in mind, or is it purely something else?
No, I never have a particular reader in mind, but I think I write first of all for myself, in order to understand something, or it's quite hard to start. I didn't know how I was going to write this. I didn't know how to do it, and it's really weird because I don't know how many books I've written, but I know that at the beginning of every book I have to, as it were, learn to write again. Really? To match that, whatever it is that I'm writing about. Wow. And I always think I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not up to it. It's as if I feel as if I've got no accumulated competence, and I'm going at it kind of as an amateur. Oh. So I mean, I know I can put a good sentence together and all that, but the thing about, and I've often thought about stand-up, which I think is the most daring form of art that exists. I think what you're exposing yourself in a way that is, I suppose it's a bit like being a writer and writing a book, but at least when you write a book, the reader's not there. You're not standing by the reader while they're reading it. If they're going, ho hum, I think I'll make a cup of tea. Whereas you really want them to go, oh, I'll never put this book down. It changed my life, that kind of thing. But well, see, I thought at the beginning of writing this book, I thought, I'll have to do some kind of introductory stuff about football and about the history of football in Australia and blah, blah, blah. And I just knew I didn't know anything about that, and I was bored by it. I didn't care about it myself. But I couldn't, I was writing in the past tense. I got it was, I saw, that kind of thing. And I was just so bored by everything I was writing. And then one day I thought, and I was thinking, is this going to be first person? Am I going to blatantly step forward and say, this is me and this is what I saw and did? Or am I going to sort of conceal it and try to, be polemical about it? And I don't know, as soon as I decided that I just was going to say then I start to relax. And the next thing that happened was I thought I'll move to the present tense. And as soon as I went into present tense, bang, away it went. Yeah. And I could hardly keep up. But I couldn't work that out intellectually beforehand. You had to find it. I had to sort of fumble my way to it. Yeah. Is that what happens with your work? It's funny. I think very early on we learned, I'm in a comedy trio, and we learned very early on that there would be days we used to rent library meeting rooms in Collingwood and Fitzroy for $15 for 3 hours and go in there and just piss about for 3 hours. And there'd be days of that with nothing. And then one day 5 ideas would come. And then you realise, actually that week of nothing was incredibly valuable. Absolutely. Because all that time your unconscious is doing a hell of a lot of work. And I've, how you always curse yourself for being lazy and for putting things off and procrastinating. But those procrastinating times, they're fruitful, and you can't believe it while it's happening. Yeah. Because you think, God, I'm a slob. I'm so lazy. I'll never do 100%. This. Yeah. Oh, that's great. I had one last question. Did Amby like the book? Oh, yes, he did. And I was very worried about that. And I would have... somebody asked me yesterday if I gave him veto power, and I didn't exactly say, if you don't like it, I won't publish it. Yeah. But he, because he was going to be exposed in it, and also it was in the embarrassing position of being sort of more talked about in the book than any of the other guys. I thought that might worry him, and it probably did. But no, he liked it. Yeah, he's happy with it. Yeah, great. I'm happy to say. It's funny you say there's moments where a door opens for a moment and he says a phrase like girl problems or something like that. And you go, I want to know what's going on Girls are the bane of my existence.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Well, yeah, great. If you haven't read this book, it's absolute... I'm going through your back catalogue now as well, and it's a roller coaster of different things all over the place. But it's fantastic. The season, you can listen to it, you can read it wherever. How do you think the Dogs will go this year?
Oh, I'm a bit worried. Are you?
They looked very good at moments last year. Like they
Yes.
looked really, really glorious. There's a lot of lean, talking about these sort of Greek figures, there's a lot of them at the moment.
Long, lean guys.
Lean young men just
Is
leaping.
Poulter still playing for us?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Jacob Poulter, is that who it is?
No, I've forgotten his first name. Liam? No, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
The Ranger?
he's one of the... No, he's got a sort of rather bedraggled looking black mullet and he's...
Caleb Poulter.
Yeah, he's got kind of hollow cheeks.
Yep.
He's good. I spend a lot of time just on the on my computer looking at, yesterday I looked at great moments of Bont.
The Bont.
And then other times it's interesting to see in those passages of play that they cut them just to show one player.
Yeah.
And because there's Bont, he's doing everything. And I'm going,
Yeah.
But at the same time, you see all these other players and what they're doing and how over the years they've developed and their relationship to Bont on the field.
Isn't that cool?
And I find that quite educating me.
The 2016 grand final, when you look back at that team and how much that dramatically changes to the 2021 team and where they are now, and but also the different haircuts of Beveridge as well. Your coach, yeah. Yes, no. I hope they go well for you this year. I think they're well poised to be very very
so.
impressive. And if you ever do want to go to a game, let me know. I'll come with you.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Helen.
Okay, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.